Hello, everybody. This is Joe Cox, pop marketer. You're listening to the Pop Marketing Podcast. You probably know that because you're watching it. And you might say it's mid-September. What are you doing, like with skulls in the background? And like that's just normal, I would say. That's February, but it's mid-September. It's not really time for a Halloween thing. And I say, hey, anytime's spooky time. B, if Spirit Halloween's open, we're in it. Like we're in the season. And my daughter and I have already been to Spirit like 3 times. Yeah, so like it's time. It's time for it. And since it's the Halloween season, I like to talk about it. And the only person that I think of when it becomes the Halloween season is one human being, and that's Tim Canton. Welcome back to the Pop Marketing Podcast. How are you, man?
I am fantastic. And as soon as that 12-foot skeleton was on the Home Depot site in July, it was Halloween season. So I understand.
Like midsummer,
Yeah.
like just the hottest time. You were texting me on like, hey, just saying they're in.
I did. I
like,
sent several texts to people to say that. Yeah, to let them know.
Hey,
but thanks for having me back on. It's always fun to chat with you.
Well, and like that's part of the conversation is kind of like we're going to get into that too. Like, cause I'm finding this whole Home Depot taking things from Spirit Halloween and like the videos and like the kind of like the showmanship of these animatronics and different things. I find it all fascinating, and you're the one that knows all about it. So we're gonna be talking about that
for sure. Yeah.
But I will say, I'm going to intro you. We've been on the show before. You've been so gracious before. Like I think last time we were on, you had invited me to a conversation with the guys from
the Ghost Hunters.
Ghost Nation.
Yeah. Steven Tango.
Ghost Hunter guy.
Yeah.
Steven Tango, which is a highlight of my life. Ghost shows. You know, I got to talk with ghost shows guys. And they're very cool. And they have like great stuff in their office.
A whole haunted relic collection that Steve had that someday I'm gonna find him again and we're gonna get him on and talk about that. But
he was great.
Steve's great.
I'll take any ghost hunter. I know them all. Sasquatch.
Well, I'll give you another one later on when we get in a deeper dive of a show you should check out if you haven't already. I'm sure you know about it.
Well, there's a podcast that is on a new. We'll talk. I can't believe we haven't talked about this before because I watched the whole first season of it.
It's probably the same thing I'm going to tell you, but
I guarantee it.
We'll figure it out.
There's a wife and husband team is mine.
Yeah, that's another one maybe from Amazon Prime. Yeah, we'll get into it.
That's my favorite.
We could probably talk about that for an entire podcast by itself.
Entire podcast,
guarantee,
because they're changing the entire face of haunted documentary show filmmaking. But so Tim Canton, for those of you that don't know Tim, one of my favorite creative minds, a Renaissance human being, because I really enjoy having people on that. I don't know what he does. He does a lot.
I don't know what I do either some days.
Yeah. And that is the thing, is like it gets confusing as the person, but you're really good at a lot of stuff. Designing, activating a ton of experiential and design work, specifically relevant to our conversation, this very Halloween season conversation. Work with ARGs, which for you outside of understanding what ARGs are.
That's my favorite thing to do. Yeah.
It's really cool. Alternate reality games, which we'll talk about. So you've done that for, things like Pennywise the Clown, for Stephen King's It, Ready Player One, Stephen King's Universe kind of TV streaming series, Castle Rock. Too soon. Like I wanted to see more. Netflix Lost in Space series, Stranger Things. We worked together on Tomb Raider and some other Square Enix stuff. Worked on the agency side, worked on brand side. Now, which took up a good part of our pre-conversation we're going to talk about here, working with new to me was 13th, the fine folks at 13th Floor, which is a company that basically owns a ton of haunts. They call them haunts in the industry, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
haunted houses, haunted
Haunted
experiences.
attractions, immersive experiences. Yeah, they've got 12 different markets, 15 different haunts. All, of course, Halloween lovers' dream, right? So, kind of the perfect convergence of things I did for a living, my hobbies on the side, and the things I love kind of converged into one job and one company. And I've known the co-founder for 20 years, going back to when they had a pop-up haunt in a Fuddruckers parking lot. So yeah, it's been interesting because it's a completely different shift and mindset from that agency day to day into a haunted attraction and Halloween company.
I mean, awesome.
Yeah, in a good
A
way.
Yeah, in a super good way. And like I said, like it's you have that's like half of the stuff. Like then we have downright creepy,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Downer
which
Creepy.
is
It's our genre outlet that we cover. South by, Fantastic Fest, Comic Con, news, reviews, interviews. Even have start releasing shorts from Panic Fest, which I know we'll talk about in a minute, on our platform. So we've been able to take Panic Fest films that we screened, short films, and put them on Downright Creepy for everybody to enjoy.
which I've watched all of them, and then Panic Fest to bring up Panic Fest, which I would say is, if not the best genre, film fest, feature film fests, or feature films and short films, all from kind of budding artists in the realm of horror, thriller, sci-fi,
Yeah, yeah,
or
it's
basically horror.
kind of a genre festival. We focus on horror, of course, sci-fi creeps in there, thrillers. Um, been doing it now since 2013 with my partner Adam Roberts, who owns Screenline Armor, which is the last independent theater in Kansas City. And we've kind of slowly seen it grow through community, kind of loyal fan base. We've started to get really good ambassadors with filmmakers like Joe Lynch, Spider One from Power Man 5000, who's Rob Zombie's brother. He started doing film and brought him to Panic Fest. He's premiered both films, and so much so he's an ambassador of the fest that Adam, co-founder of Panic Fest, just got done shooting a film, his third film with him, and was a producer on the film. So we've been able to really grow this organically, not only through the people attending, but also our special guests and filmmakers, and to help promote their projects year round with our Panic alum program. So we don't just show the film and say, everyone come watch it. We also promote it afterwards. And coincidentally, we've had a lot of our Panic alum start to get release dates and trailers come out within the last month that we screened all the way back in April, that have got deals sometimes through our festival as well. So we're really proud of what we're being able to build. Funny story, if you'll allow me to indulge in it real quick.
Please.
Joe Gravesian, that did The Stylist, and tons of other shorts, released her film with Arrow last year, and it had a lot of acclaim. It had Bria Grant in it. Najara Townsend were the two featured actresses in it. She texted me the other day because she just did a new film that Eduardo Sanchez produced from Blair Witch Project, and said, "Hey, we're shopping around our film for festivals, and the people helping us listed all the festivals that we're going to apply to." And I won't name all of those necessarily, but um, one of them was like South by, for instance. And she goes,
Big,
"Okay,
big
big
places. Like,
places,
yeah.
right?" And she goes, "Well, I can probably come up with a lot of other ones that we can submit to." And they go, "Oh, no, we've got those. Those are on our tier 2 list." So essentially, she was like, "We've got 5 or 6 of these festivals that got listed. We were the only genre fest on there," which made me super proud. And she was so proud, she like had to share it with me through a text and say, because she's from Kansas City too. So it's like a point of pride, right? That we've been able to do this at an independent theater with basically 2 of us. And then we grew, a couple people, but basically doing this year round and trying to build this community of horror fans, and filmmakers that come to the fest even when they don't have something. So to hear that from her, to have Joe Lynch, go on podcast as an ambassador, to tell people about the festival each year when he doesn't have a film and he comes in anyway and hosts stuff for us, has been a real treat for us as fans of horror, to build this type of thing.
Well, you're fan powered. Like, it's not like the beauty of what you do is like there's a lot of love in the fandom of this stuff. And I remember horror, like, it's no stranger to fandom. Like, dude, Fangoria magazine, I remember it before the internet,
Yeah.
like it's the fandom of fandoms was already there, and like the 80s slasher stuff, and like horror has always had this very deep fan base, and now it's spread its wings. It's, the internet has happened, and you've been seeing like the evolution of this kind of like uh, all these different kinds of genres mixing and matching together, and all these things kind of grow into what we have now.
Yeah.
Why would you go through the pains of a horror genre film fest? Like, is it all the money? That is it, is it the millions of dollars? Like, where did you get started in this horror place? I think I do. Last time we didn't talk about like
Yeah, like
where
origin
did you
story.
get yeah where did you get the will and the like want to build something like this in Kansas City, and something that lasts for dang near 15 years.
Yeah, we're past the decade mark now.
That's right.
Like origin story a little bit without getting too deep in the weeds. Um, I just remember being young and the curiosity in the 80s of the video store and not having trailers on YouTube, having the VHS case as kind of like your first impression of something and need to grab your attention. That's why poster design was so much better back then too.
So
Because that
good.
was your trailer, for the most part. So being able to go to the video store, not only with movies but with games too. My mom would take me to get games. My mom and dad were divorced. My dad would go and get the horror films, and we'd watch those. My mom would take me and go get games at Blockbuster, Video World, whatever local store. So it started with that, and then the love for Halloween creeped in from the films. And my mom was always very supportive of that side of like decorate and costumes, and I'll make you a costume, or like whatever the case may be. And it was never a thing of like, you can't watch that, you're too young. I was always just kind of trusted, I guess.
Yeah, you. Yes, yeah,
No
yeah.
one ever told me no that I can remember, which is kind of surprising now that I'm really like thinking about it. But so my
But you
love,
turned out like, see,
yeah,
folks, like, you turned out like an okay
yeah, I
dad.
turned out fine, I think, for the most part. But yeah, I started at a very young age. I think the love of it, and it just stuck with me. I don't know what it was about it. I think it's the escapism that you can kind of have when you're, in the role of the victim or the serial killer that's coming after you, and the thrill of the chase and that kind of thing, regardless of what happens to them. It's the storytelling, the world building that all comes out of that. It's not just maybe the cheesy thing that people think about sometimes when they think of horror that are more casual. It's really about the worlds that these people build and the characters they build and how they're brought to life through film and now marketing and now merchandise. And Freddy Krueger back in the day, who was really like the pinnacle of pop culture, where you're seeing all kinds of merchandise of that being made, and Elvira being, so prominent in like beer commercials back in the day as a talk show host, not even a character in film. So a lot of stuff ingrained, I think, from pop culture growing up, that was also from fringe things, um, that really kind of gave me a love for the genre. And it wasn't too long after that, I was in high school and had a website called frightsearch.com. And it was horror stuff and haunted attraction stuff. And back then, there wasn't a ton of sites like that. To give you context, I think Bloody Disgusting might have started in 2008, the biggest genre website online right now. And I had Fright Search until 2006. and ironically sold it to my current boss because I just couldn't keep up with it. And then I got the itch 2 or 3 years later in 2009 and started Downright Creepy. So I've been blogging since 1999, doing
OG.
doing horror stuff and haunted attraction things. So that's that love. I think you can attribute the longevity of it because of the blogging and the websites that I've done and the reporting on news and films and festivals that I attended. And really, when you start attending those festivals, that shaped even my career to some extent because I would cover South by and Comic Con and be like, man, look at these experiences people are creating in 2011 or so. I really want to try this. And that's when the ARGs started that I talked about on the last episode with like Stranger Things and It and Pennywise. I wanted to do that type of stuff, but I couldn't build a structure. So how do I build that fandom and engagement through storytelling, world building that I loved so much as a kid, and bring that to people at conventions when you've got an isolated, concentrated fandom in one spot? And how can you celebrate that through these stories that you can easily build out with characters that are already there? So yeah, I mean, everything in a weird way shaped who I am today, even though at the heart of my career was like agencies and advertising. It was the creativity and learning, the things that you need at those jobs
That's right.
and applying it to the things that you love, which I know that you also do, so well with your whole concept of pop marketer. So yeah, I think that is how Panic Fest happened. Is I was doing the site and I was hosting things at the theater, Walking Dead nights and American Horror Story, and doing remember the Alamo screenings and special horror screenings there. And then one day Adam just said, hey, do you want to do a film festival with me at Screenland? I was like, sure. And he had known the theater for maybe a few months. And, I was very fresh and naive to what we could do. I was in my mind, I'm just like, we can get any film we want. It's a film festival.
Yeah, this is easy.
That's not how it works. And it's taken it's taken us 10 years of really hard work and, like I said, community building. And from my side, I kind of have the PR aspect because I deal with PR firms for the website. And his side, he is very heavy in studios because he's booking films as an exhibitor for his theater. So we kind of are able to merge those and cross over occasionally with those relationships to bring in new partnerships this year with A24, Universal, Warner Brothers, and Lionsgate to show Evil Dead Rise, Renfield, Medusa Deluxe, and Sisu. Which, by the way, if you haven't seen Sisu, it's one of my favorite films of the
Haven't seen
year.
Sisu.
And we had the U.S. premiere at Panic Fest of it. So check that out as a recommendation. It's not straight horror or anything, but it's very like gritty. It's gory, but in some ways almost comical at times, but it's not necessarily meant to be. And I don't love those types of films, but this one like really did it for me. So yeah, so we were able to build those relationships that we've tried for, years.
Okay, so I mean, it's such a deep question. You're going to have to answer it in a way that's like not the deep the audience that is in this world, because this is the two worlds you have to jump between, right?
Definitely.
Like talking.
Yeah.
This is, and it's tough for me too sometimes when I'm really into something. But it's like, what have you seen? You've seen a lot happen in this world. I'm really excited about these genres just because it's got a lot of the fandoms have a lot of time behind them, and there's a lot of different genres put together. And to me, especially in the horror space, it's mixed and matched so much. Like, what do we got? We got slasher, Lovecraftian, gothic fiction, supernatural, found footage was one of my personal. Like, I'll watch a found footage. Like, I don't care how horrible they are.
Yeah.
I will watch a horror anthology. Don't care. Like, it's probably my favorite. Psychological, you got the gore fests,
Slasher,
like in their they have their own, and then you have the like
torture porn,
torture porn,
Saw
right?
type
Like,
things. Yeah,
yeah, the Saw stuff I was gonna say, and
still
then
around.
you have like still around, and then you have Ed and Lorraine Warren stuff that has proven itself a long-lasting Halloween thing now of craziness. Like when you are at it from your angle at like Panic Fest, and I always like to hear like where you're like, oh, this is cool. This is a new thing coming up, or
Mm-hmm.
this is a new film. Where have you seen the biggest changes coming from in the last now 12 years that you're doing it? Like, have you seen a progression towards something, or like what's something that has kind of do you think, where's it sitting at right now? Like, where is the horror genre and
Yeah.
the fandoms at?
I mean, it's definitely something that I think studios strike aside, right? Probably more than ever before can be most confident in the horror genre to get a return back on what they put into it at even a low cost, right? If the right people are involved and the story is there. But what I program the shorts programming at Panic Fest, and then I have input on features, and Adam and I, kind of jostle back and forth. He ultimately makes the decisions, but we also still have those discussions, right? Of like, I don't know if Slaughterhouse should be on here, but maybe,
Maybe.
which is a film that we initially took and then it got sold before the fest. And so that's probably something to look out for, like a Sharknado type of like corny type of thing.
Well, and there's another
That's
one
a niche
too,
for it, right? So,
which is like the on purpose
yes.
ridiculous horror, because I like bad horror movies, like,
Yeah.
but I like them most when people don't know they're bad,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, and they're doing it out of passion and awesome, and it's just like bird flu,
Yeah.
as you know, like
Birdemic.
it's
Yeah.
birdemic,
Yeah, and
like
like
that's
you said, rein it in, right? Like Slaughterhouse, for anyone that doesn't know, because you may not either, obviously, because it's still pretty new,
I don't.
is about a murdering sloth in a sorority house. So,
Slaughterhouse.
Slaughterhouse. It's
Yeah, okay.
completely ridiculous, and
Hey,
we
there
want,
was the
um,
turkey one not too long ago.
yeah,
Like,
exactly, and that
yeah.
and that got a ton of press. But reining it back in a little bit, since I primarily program shorts and our live events for podcasting. Um, we had our record number of shorts this year. We had 65, I think. So we had 8 total blocks. 5 of those were in person. 3 were online because we're still lucky enough to do hybrid. One of the few festivals that still do that, which I know a ton of people appreciate. But one thing I've seen kind of every single year is the quality of everything has went up
Mm.
across the board in terms of submissions we get and what's presented to us. Everything's like, not everything, but more stuff's really well made, like cinematography and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like we're getting to the point where a lot of these, I'll pinpoint some when I'm watching them, and I watch them several times at some point to make final cuts. Stuff could be feature film, right? Like it's a pitch for a feature film, it's a jumping point for it, or it could be a pilot for a series. And I think there's a lot of potential in that. So much so that I've contacted, and I try and keep in touch with as many Panic alum as I can, or I'm always saying like, message me if you're working on a new project and you want me to watch a trailer or a fresh cut, which I just watched a short today of someone that did that, to keep up with them, because there are people that want these to become series, and they'll be like, hey, we're shooting the pilot, or hey, we're shooting the feature for our film, and we hope to have it ready for Panic Fest next year. So I'll keep you posted. So it's just a lot of stuff that, and it's awesome to see whenever a film that we maybe premiere, even if it's a short, gets made into a feature later. We've had that a handful of times where we showed the short and then they come back with the feature, 2-3 years later. And it's cool. It's almost like seeing a kid grow up, right? Like, oh, we had that when it was this thought and this kind of nugget concept, and now it's a full blown feature. Something I can kind of point to from a filmmaker perspective of seeing growth in that sense is Parker Finn. He had a film called The Hide Behind. Very simple concept in a forest. Parachuter gets kind of stuck in the woods, middle of nowhere, and there's somebody peeking out from behind trees in the forest. And it's
Creepy
simple,
already.
effective, and creepy. He went on to do another kind of concept like that, unfortunately, during COVID for South by, called Smile. Smile then became a huge hit for Paramount when they signed a feature deal.
Fantastic marketing
And it
campaign.
became
Like,
massive. And I actually really liked the film too. I saw it at Fantastic Fest last year, which I'll be attending soon this year. So that's kind of some pride in programming when you're able to make those connections and then see those filmmakers grow and have a very, very, very tiny part in exposing their work to the horror audience.
Yeah, but you're in it, like, and you get to see that from
Mhm.
like that those beginning places, right? And I think while you were talking about that, it makes sense. Shorts have never been like more popular, like they're getting more and more popular because
Yeah,
it gives directors and like people that are maybe have thoughts of doing something big, it lets them like hone
for
and
sure.
prove it without. I don't have $20 million, or which isn't a ton, but it's like I just don't. I need to prove that we have something, right?
Well,
And
it's
like the
the
shorts is a place to do, and now there's places to watch
mhm.
those, right? Like YouTubes and channels that are all towards that, and just the media that we watch now is
Yeah,
built
we've got
more towards that space.
sorry, I was gonna say we got Gunpowder and Sky, who has Dust and Alter. Um, they put out shorts that, they purchase, and I've like I said, we've got 20 on Downright Creepy now, or 25. But yeah, there's all types of plays. Bloody Bites on Bloody Disgusting's streaming service, Screenbox. All kinds of places to consume that stuff. That brings me back to a point at Panic Fest when I was doing the red carpet with Parker Finn for Smile last year. I can't for the life of me remember who it is, so forgive me. But it was a famous TikToker. I'm not sure the association at all of why they brought him out, other than he was a big influencer and it would,
Yeah, yeah, he has
allow him to
two
draw eyes,
million
which totally
things.
get. But I was having the conversation with him. I'm like, how long do you think it is before we start having short films or
Oh,
like full fledged films on
100%.
on TikTok? That was a year ago. And lo and behold, email I got not that long ago, a few weeks ago, maybe at this point, it was saying about a film that was going to be exclusive to TikTok. It was only a matter of time, but it's the short form too, I think, from our attention spans. It's funny because I think we go from, having clips on YouTube that we watch of entire streams of gamers or whatever the case may be, or paranormal stories, right? Like clips of that stuff, to binging entire series on Netflix. So I think our viewing habits vary with topic to topic and genre to genre, and if they're epics versus a contained story. But yeah, there's all types of ways to consume this stuff now, not only through content creators and streaming services that way, but with all the network streaming services, to maybe an overkill, of all these studios that have their plus streaming service that they've got out there. But there's no lack of place for content these days, whether it's
Yeah,
self-published or otherwise.
did you ever think we'd be at that place where it's like series, so many series, like the streaming has brought like it's pretty incredible how mainstream like or the ability to see the things like I watched I've been alive for a Evil Dead
Renaissance.
TV, like like brought back pretty damn good
Hmm.
streaming series,
Yeah,
and now the video game, and so many different places for an IP to like play
yeah. Eh,
and go to. And I love, I love that stuff, and you do too. But like I see things like Slender Man,
mhm,
and the things come from the internet to film, and
mhm.
then sometimes okay, sometimes
You
not.
get Dear
Uh,
David, that's gonna be coming out soon, the internet sensation.
what's the Dear David?
So Dear David was a sensation probably 10 years ago that took place live on Twitter. A BuzzFeed writer was in his apartment and scared and was live tweeting this paranormal experience he was having with Dear David. A child, I think, was missing like half of his head or something like that, like a spirit, and live tweeted it. I mean, that was years ago, and now it's getting released as a film, a feature film this fall. Um, so that just goes to show you something as simple as a concept of someone live tweeting an experience they're having years later gets converted into an actual film.
This is the world we live
Yeah,
in.
so
It's really crazy. Like
anything can happen.
like the Backrooms series, the
Yep.
SCP series on online, the whole genres mixing and matching and stealing and coming from different places is pretty incredible. Do you see, like, from the younger people, do you see like a lot of the traditional stuff when it comes to, like, what's the things
Mm-hmm.
that, like, you're like, I have not seen that before? Like, what is the genre, the quality level you say is up, but like, what
Yeah.
are the things that kind of new and surprise you?
Genre, it's funny. I have a friend that does a festival too called Nightmare Film Festival. Um, and he has a trend watch, and he'll put out like, here are the things I'm seeing in the submissions so far. I typically don't do that per se. I'll program things from like kind of a DJ set of ebbs and flows, so you don't have anything that's the exact same genre, or you don't have
If you're getting different
two
tastes to
very
people.
long films put together. So I try and program it maybe like a DJ set almost in each block, so you get something different. However, I will say one of the more interesting films I've seen, shorts probably in the last few years that was submitted, was actually based on a true story, which you hear that and you're like, well, sure. That got
I
played
know all
out for a
about
while
true
too, right?
stories.
This,
Yeah,
however, really was.
Cocaine Bear.
Yeah, exactly. She got into a very serious car accident. Kelsey Bolig, I believe was her name. I apologize if I'm forgetting that. She got in a very serious car accident, and essentially the whole short plays out, and you don't necessarily know this right away, of her head kind of like coma and her induced
Mm.
coma that's taking place, and she's fighting to stay alive. It's that concept of like life and death and fighting it. So when you're in it, there's things that happen in a dreamlike state, and you're like, wait, what's happening? She doesn't know it, but she's fighting back. It's not until toward the end when they do kind of the hard cut to the credits, they're like actual footage of the ambulance at the intersection where she got hit when she was riding a bike. And then it shows, as it's showing the credits, her recovery clips that are happening. And I became very emotional, and I'd watch these, 3 or 4 times by the time I get down to final cuts. And I sit in the theater and try and watch all the blocks, assuming I can, cut away from whatever duties are happening at the fest. I remember watching it in the theater with a handful of people, and actually got more emotional in the theater than I did, I think, sitting here at night trying to stay awake, getting through submissions.
Sure,
And I
sure.
actually soak those things in, but you also get to see it with people. So you get their emotions with it. So that was, it's not necessarily a subgenre, but I guess it is a little bit because it's based on a true story, but it's actually based and rooted on an emotional experience. But she found a way to wrap it into horror and like psychological a little bit, and mixed in some comedy even at times, because you're in a dreamlike state. So that one for me stood out a lot, and kind of the idea of dealing with mortality. Um, there was somebody that was basically the Grim Reaper, but not in traditional garb, in normal garb. And he would go and talk to a psychiatrist. It was called Time is Time is Up, I believe. Oh gosh, I'm forgetting the name of that. I shouldn't. Apologies to Alex Backies, who's the director of that. But he would go and he was talking to a psychiatrist about something, but you don't know what. And as he's talking about it, he's like, "Oh, I can't get in a relationship. Like, I can't hold a job down. All this type of stuff." And the reveal at the end is he's the Grim Reaper. He can't do these things because he's there to essentially be there in their time of death. And then as you realize that with all the cutscenes he had been discussing, everyone's dying, the psychiatrist dies too. Like he's there actually not even to talk about this problem, but to take her life. So
Well, I mean, these are really great premises.
yeah,
Like, it almost feels to me that horror in this genre has become the place, the spooky and the supernatural and stuff has become like a place where, I mean, they can still make money from it. So it feels like it's like the place where the originality still happens.
for sure.
Like,
It's it's
like
something interesting the last few years. I feel like I've seen, and maybe it's just because I'm so immersed into this genre side, I've seen less and less comedies come out that are big. Like you don't see as many big comedies necessarily that are
not like there
pushed,
used
or
to
even
be.
like really good indie ones necessarily that you would find. They get tucked away on streaming, and sometimes they get released and dumped.
They
That's the
do.
other problem. Um, but yeah, I think in horror there's so much to play with from an emotional standpoint, and so many subgenres that you can go down to tell a story, that I think you're right. It's such a big sandbox that you have a lot of flexibility and stuff that you can make and create that's successful in that sense.
Yeah, you can get weird and still
Yeah.
everybody makes their money, right? And that is something that a lot of people are, say like, all we see is in the theaters
Yeah.
is the same old, and it's the sure bets. And I'm like, yes, if you're going to spend $200 million on
Yeah.
something,
And sometimes those don't
you
work out like they should.
like
More
we just
often
talked
than
about the
not,
Flash.
actually, when they're
Yeah,
that high. Yeah.
yeah. You don't get a Barbie every time.
Yeah.
There's not a Barbie every time.
That's something that Blumhouse has done really well at low
Yeah.
budget films that have good returns and decent marketing behind them. And A24 has also done that, because A24 has created not only interesting, like intriguing films, but a brand in itself. So when you hear A24, some people are automatically intrigued, regardless of what it is, and will see it. So they've almost got a brand within a brand.
Let's talk about it because they do
Yes.
have a brand. They do, and it's very odd because you don't see this anymore. I
No.
think it was something back in the day that we don't even remember, like
Mhm.
Universal Monsters and like the things that used to be like the person that made the movie, the studio
Yeah.
or the place that brought the movie together was known to make a certain caliber or a certain method of film. And
Spielberg like. Yeah.
yes, and that's probably the closest that we know
Mhm.
of
Amblin.
that because that
Yeah.
was in a time before, I think, before us. But and when I was young, it was just like I don't know what's at the first of the movie.
No.
Like it's just like there's a tiger yelling,
Yeah,
like
MGM or
roaring. But I'm not thinking of like, oh, this is in this. This is this kind of like this kind of movie. They
yeah.
do a certain kind of A24. I just know too, just because they have a killer like email, they have a killer
Mhm.
marketing like that isn't about the film itself, but it's about we make a certain kind of movie for a certain kind of group, and like we have merch, we have killer art and shirts, and you can get the vinyl record of our kind of movie. So you're kind of an A24 person. Could you explain to those that don't even know what A24 is? What is A24 and what kind of content do they make?
Yeah, I mean, they're not independent, but they feel somehow like they still might be. Right?
They very much
It's
and
kind of like,
probably strategically and purposefully that way,
for
but like
sure.
it
Yeah.
feels very much like I'm an A24 type of person. I like these kind of
Yep.
movies. I'm not.
I think it likens it to, in a sense, certain people like certain types of bands. Like you find a band and you're like, oh man, you're a fan of Fish or something like
Yeah,
that,
yeah, I
right?
got. Yeah, you're in.
It's
Okay, you're
it's
a
that
different
type of
kind of
thought
folk.
process, I think, where you go into it and you're like, "Oh, man, you like A24, I do too. Like, did you see Talk to Me?" "Yeah, I saw Talk to Me." And admittedly, I'm probably in that group of, the Hereditaries and, Talk to Me that just came out, and they announced a sequel to that,
Midsummer.
Midsummer, and they bring in the
That's
marketing with that stuff, like Midsummer, where there's a bear in a cage and you can buy a little bear in a cage and it harkens back to something that's pivotal in the movie or a scene in the movie. And not to say other people don't do that, but they just find such clever ways to do it as like a collectible or a limited run, and they make it feel elevated. And I think it's something that a lot of horror fans hate, hearing the term elevated horror. Um, but that's kind of what it is. They play in that sandbox I talked about, and they do things in unusual ways sometimes. They might play on like familiar themes, but kind of repackage it in such a way that feels fresh and new with new voices. Oftentimes they don't necessarily cast people that are big names in movies. They might have one big name in the movie, right? Like Bodies, Bodies, Bodies with Pete Davidson. Or when they bring in,
I
um
mean, everything, everywhere, all at once.
yeah,
Was that
exactly. That's
A24?
that's almost a outlier, I feel like, of,
Well, yes, you're bringing back
yeah,
people,
you
or
brought back
you're
and then you have very familiar faces in like Jamie Lee Curtis. That's a huge cult
Oh,
icon.
huge holes. Yeah.
And has done things outside of the genre, like
Round Eye. I mean, you got Indiana Jones. You got like
exactly, which
somebody who hasn't seen in
relaunched
20 something years,
his career.
whole career.
So yeah, I mean, they just do some really interesting things. They're not afraid to push the envelope to do weird stuff, and it somehow works. And if it doesn't for you, it's very
You're not
much
one of them.
yeah, it's very
Yeah.
much a certain type of person, which then goes back to that fan club, almost cult-like mentality. Like, oh, you're not one of us. You don't get it. A little bit. I should
Well, it's something I've said about brands from the get go. Like my background was, in the consumer side of like beverages, so
sure,
Red Bull.
yeah.
And it was like very well known. It was like, we don't want everybody to like us. Like,
Mhm. Like
you
Red
can make a
Bull?
lot of money from, yes,
Yeah,
you can make a lot of money from just half the people. Like the owner was always like, he was like, half of everyone hates us, but
right.
it's like, you can make a lot of money from half the people in the world.
Yeah,
Like,
the loyalist.
and there is something about having a point of view, very specific point of view, but still open. Like if you
Mhm,
look at all A24 films, like there's a lot of different stuff going on, but
mhm.
smart, a
Sometimes too
little bit,
smart.
a little bit for their own good, or enough. I'll be honest, enough for YouTubers to like put a whole lot of 2-hour explanations
Sure.
on the kind of background of Midsummer and Norwegian
Yeah.
like religion stuff and how close it was to the real thing, and that's a thing now. It's
We
like,
could also
can you
pivot that same thought and mentality to what Jordan Peele's done with his brand that then became a studio of Monkeypaw, and it's the same type of idea, I think, right? Like, it's the same approach in a sense. It's not as weird and wacky, as A24 gets sometimes, but it's very much rooted, I think, in that. And coming from a place of comedy, that he did, plays on, I think, the thematic theme of, tragedy and comedy and how they work together and push and pull each other. So yeah, I think he's also another one that's mastered that, whatever that is, right?
Yeah, and it's all very weird in this world now where it's like A24 has done it through kind of like curating this like different kinds of films.
Mhm.
I'm that I know of. Like it's a certain kind of uh, deeper
Mhm.
psychological. Like, well, I'm going to tell you, if you're going to enjoy this show and be weirded out by it or whatever, like a
Yeah.
Peel movie, it's like I can
Yeah.
enjoy it on surface level, and then you can start peeling it back and be like, this
Then you go
has
down
something else to say.
the 2-hour YouTube
Or,
rabbit hole. Then you go down
and I
that,
love those rabbit
and you
holes.
figure
I
out
do.
all the Easter eggs and hidden meanings behind stuff in Nope and Us and all that kind of stuff. I should have prefaced our A24 conversation a little bit with the fact that the company I work for now at 13th Floor, they're invested in 13th Floor.
Well,
A
now you
percentage
have to
a
say that
percentage
kind of
of,
stuff.
you know.
You have to say that stuff,
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
is
now
like,
it's company speak, but I say all of that, whether I was with a company that was attached to them even a little bit or not. So
well, it's a good, whatever you meant from it is a good transition because
yeah.
I want to get into, because you're a lover of storytelling in general,
Mhm.
and I am too. I'm a fan, and I like to like it. I like to be a fan of the people that make and do those things. 13th Floor. So to me, it's just a new way to experience things. But it's like I've been growing up with haunted houses since I was
Totally.
a kid, and it's just the coolest. Like Kansas City is a very you wouldn't think of it, but like we've had very big
40, 50 years of big haunts.
of big haunts,
Yeah.
and they call them haunts now. It's just like it's these experiences that you go, and usually it was like very regional, not even regional. It was very town by town.
Yep, for sure.
Like in our childhood, it was like somebody crazy that could afford the insurance.
Right, or
Uh,
that didn't have insurance and did it
Oh, right.
anyway.
There was maybe some mafia
For sure.
stuff going on, but
Yeah,
like,
Kansas City wise.
but whatever it was, great way to filter money through. But whatever it was like a big thing. It's like whenever you're younger in the teens, like you go to these places and giant buildings and you get the bejesus scared out of you, you know, and there's nothing better than that feeling. Um, of a real, like, okay, at a movie, I'm experiencing this kind of safety of being chased and these horrible things happening to people, but I'm super safe. But now one step further is
A
video
visceral.
games probably.
Yeah.
And then it's like now we're in this world of like, let's just the meow wolves, the like bring you into the experience, right? And like haunted houses have been doing that for a long time.
Yeah.
Like,
They're
you know,
kind of the original immersive theater, the
they
original
are very much.
experiential activation. It's all that kind of rolled into one place as a haunted attraction or an immersive experience or immersive theater experience, all of which we have at 13th Floor. But yeah, I mean, haunted attractions for me was just tradition, right? Like it's something you do. You go to the pumpkin patch, and you go to haunted houses and you go trick or treating and you watch scary movies. Like that's what Halloween and fall was to me growing up, and still is. To a little lesser extent, maybe on some of the things that I'd like to be, just because we're adults and we have more responsibilities. But
It's horrible.
damn it.
I know.
But yeah, I mean, it's tradition for a lot of people, and we've had that in Kansas City, for instance, for 40 years with the West Bottom Haunts at the Beast and the Edge of Hell, and Main Street Morgue even further back, and
I
those
remember
types
that.
of things, Third Street Asylum and whatever. There's still some smaller ones, Zombie Purge. I could go on about Kansas City stuff, but yeah, 13th Floor Entertainment Group started in Denver in a Fuddruckers parking lot with a pop-up temporary haunted house that Chris Stafford and Warren Conrad started, 15, 20 years ago at this point, since I've known them. And it kind of burst on the scene, I want to say in 2017. I've only been with the company, I should say, for a few months. But in 2017, when they started kind of opening other haunts in new markets and also having partnerships with haunts that existed that then became under their umbrella. Not going to name all the haunts or markets, but they're in 12 different markets. They got 15 haunts, I think, including the LA Haunted Hayride, Shacktoberfest, which is a family-oriented haunt during the day and more adult-themed at night. And it's definitely Shaq's baby along with us. So Shaquille O'Neal has
You
a
did say Shacktoberfest, right?
Shacktoberfest,
Like,
baby. Yeah,
you did say,
I
and it
sure
is a
did.
haunt.
Which this year is now on the Queen Mary in Santa Barbara.
Dude, Queen Mary
That Queen Mary
is
haunted
absolutely the most haunted, one of the top, at least
places,
5
and
haunted places.
you can stay overnight in the cabin.
Get out.
So it's like a whole experience where you can go and kind of have fun with the family during the day, or if you don't, maybe come at night, enjoy some rides, some haunted attractions, some games that are kind of themed where you can throw, zombie heads in baskets, like a basketball game.
It is
Yeah, go
Shacktoberfest.
through mazes, and then if you want, stay on the Queen Mary. So that gives you an idea of, LA Haunted Hayride has been around for years. The Great Horror Campout, which maybe or may not be trying to come back. Um, and then we have stuff also outside of haunted attractions that I don't think I've really talked to you much about, but Otherworld, which is essentially Meow Wolf. And we just opened that up in Philly mid-August. So yeah, check out Otherworld if you're in Philly or in the Northeast region there. It's incredible. So yeah, we have a lot of different markets, tons of different creatives that are in those markets that help bring those things to life year round. It's a year round business, right? Like it's not, oh, August is here, September. Like these guys are working year round, bringing new concepts to life. Sometimes every year where themes get switched out. Some stay for a 2 or 3 year period, but yeah, it's a constant creative process at all these places. And I'm on as Director of Experiential Activations. So we're trying to pull out something new from the company that we didn't have before and actually bring you experiences that are pop-ups or attached to IPs, or maybe they're ticketed experiences, or, we're still trying to figure it all out. But we've essentially been doing this stuff really well for years in all these different markets. And that's what we sell to studios, right? Is, oh, well, what's your portfolio look like? Well, look at all of our haunts. They're immersive experiences. They are experiential activations. They're just in a grander scale. So instead of one room or one little pop-up thing that you have on site somewhere at South by, we have an entire 20,000 square foot space of those things happening, not just one 10 by 10 booth or 1,000-foot square warehouse that you've rented out for the weekend. So yeah, we're trying to bring that essence of what we're creating in those, not just with horror, but that creative team and that experience, and pull it out into these new experiential activations.
Well, if you think of it, I love the art of a trailer, right? And my favorite quote, and I forgot who said it. It was somebody makes a lot of trailers, which is, there's an insane art, but the art, my favorite quote from that was if people are thinking, you've lost. I want raw emotion. I want people feeling anticipation times 10 based on an emotion. That's why music, and that's why it's they don't need to show you anything. They don't need to give a lot away, or good ones don't, because they have a certain thing that brings you to a certain place that gets you to be that movie's for me.
Well,
and to me, experiential, these that you're talking about, is your movie, you want millions of people to come to it, or whatever it is, it exudes this thing. So we can take a little scene, or we can take a thing out of it that people may know or be nostalgic for or don't know, and give them a taste through an experience.
Absolutely.
That's more than just the sight and sound of a trailer. Can we actually get you in there for a second to do something, maybe a scene that you remembered, that's a rehash of something, a nostalgia bomb, or something that is brings you into it doesn't have to be fear.
Yeah.
It
Depending
could
on
be
the
awe,
property,
and could be awe and wonder,
Yeah.
like the meow wolves and the other worlds, and it could be, but it is, if you want to make a fan, to me, it's the best way to do it is multi-experiential.
Well, and it's kind of like you said earlier, when you're in the theater, you're in a safe space. When you're in that moment, it's more visceral and memorable, regardless.
It's just a little less safe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. We're not gonna ever actually hurt you, but at the same time, you're living psychologically in it now. And then,
yes, and I am the main character, or I am taking the place of that.
Especially if it's
pretty cool.
Before the movie comes out, you almost have that taste. And I'm only using genre as an example of kind of fear or anxiety or anticipation. Then you go
and I think
see
that's
the
why
movie.
I think that's why horror is such a big part of this, is because fear is it's not easy at all. But it is, it's a go-to, right?
You can print that in your head, imprint it in your head. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's essentially what we're trying to do, kind of start that new division and create those experiences for brands and studios alike. You mentioned to me kind of in pre-production, oh, what are some
the 2-hour conversation?
This was even before that, the pre-production in a text.
We were texting back and forth, because you were actually texting me today with a creepypasta that you were
I'm working
really
on
good.
an ARG on the side as a personal project that I may pitch to my boss Chris to maybe wrap it into 13th Floor, possibly. But yeah, it's called Boy Who Steals Flowers, and I'll leave it at that for now. But it's an ARG creepy. That's kind of a new creepypasta idea that then you can interact with, and it's very much something that is physical and digital potentially, and community based in terms of solving puzzles, and kind of like an email chain letter in a sense, if you will. That old school really mentality
good. That's really good. It's that. Email chain letter. Yeah. That's really good. That's way better.
Putting a new spin on that.
It's like the bucket challenge, but cool.
But creepy.
Yes, very
So
creepy.
yeah, that we don't do at the moment much digital stuff at 13th Floor, but I'm trying to find ways to bring that type of stuff, whether it's layering it into an experience, whether it's the haunts or an experiential activation where we can do digital and physical, um, or just straight digital where everybody can be a part of it, or we do geocaching where some people have to advance ideas and stories within the ARG. But yeah, there's all types of ways you can do that. You can, layer in brands and IPs to do it too, and build things around that. It doesn't always have to be necessarily a film. Um, but yeah, this is a original idea, so I love doing those
ARG
things.
ARG. So you have a big history in that. We talked a bit about it last time you were on,
Yeah,
but ARGs in general, alternate reality game,
yeah,
which sounds kind of like augmented reality. Yeah,
uh,
like it's tough
it's
to understand.
it is. Yeah, whenever I just say the acronym, I'm like, oh yeah, everybody doesn't know what that means, and then I say it to myself, and I'm like, well, it doesn't mean that necessarily.
It doesn't mean that.
Not
Like
really at
I
all.
just was like, I don't think that's really
It
it,
should be
but like
called
I get
almost
where you.
like alternate space or alternate dimension I don't know. It doesn't like accurately describe it either because it's not
Like,
necessarily what it means since we now have such a heavy vocabulary knowledge of AR. When you hear AR and you hear alternate reality played out, it's like, no, it's not that. It doesn't mean you can't layer in that stuff to your game. But yeah, it's certainly not just augmented reality at all. It's essentially a storyline kind of world building thing that you might have puzzles involved, you might have task involved to advance a storyline, or just the game mechanics in general. Sometimes it's community based, sometimes it's completely solo. I like doing ones as much as I can that are kind of like mostly could be passive and solo, but much like we talked about with A24 or Jordan Peele, there's layers that you can peel back and go deeper in. Some require that to complete the task. But we've seen stuff that I've done in the past for ARGs where it's a real converge mentality with the users and participants that are doing it to ultimately get to the end of it, to complete the story that's being told. And that's the same mentality I'm kind of using with what I'm working on now. And some of the stuff I've done in the past was very much kind of like one-off scavenger hunt type things. Like there's a scavenger
but
hunt
those
starting
are the
now
things that are those are the things that are easier, not easier, but those
mm,
are things that work
to digest.
whenever you bring a group of people together for a weekend to a conference or
Oh, for sure.
to a con or something because they're looking for different stuff to do. They want to have an experience that's like no other, but they don't live there or whatever necessarily, and they don't have 10 weeks to go through something. And
No,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
you have to design towards the what's going on,
yeah.
and like a lot of those we know from like cons, and I'll say from people that are or marketers that aren't aware. It's like, I mean, the concept of Westworld is very much that
Mm,
Disney parks
yeah,
are built off of
yeah.
it. Like this isn't anything new. It's very much the reason why Disney has such a fandom,
Hmm.
because the details of the storytelling inside the parks and bringing people into
That world
feeling like they're into the stories that Disney had made,
for
right?
sure.
Like Next Level was very much that. The haunts are very much at the root of that. But now we got weird stuff. So it's like you have more people playing Dungeons and Dragons
Oh
and
yeah.
like and understanding rules of team gaming and different things. You have the
Hmm.
internet and more people understanding group,
Hmm.
working together with a group to solve puzzles and do things.
There's COVID happened too, which accelerated some of that
COVID happened too.
with online escape rooms and stuff of that nature. But I mean, it all goes back to I Love Bees, which was also the campaign for Halo. Um, that was very community
Yeah.
based, right? Like that was the first kind of its kind that I remember. Um,
Yep.
that happened in kind of digital age. There's been stuff I can't think of the life of me Scavenger hunt. It was based on a book from the 70s, and there's statues in certain cities, like 9 cities have a
Yes,
hidden
there was
jewel.
a book.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's still to this
yeah.
day not solved. They've only had like 3 of the 9 jewels found, and that was just from a book from back in the 70s, and how it's progressed from that to I Love Bees to kind of where we are now. Someone that does a really good job of it is Darren Lynn Bousman, with kind of these curated experiences. He was a director of Saw, the original Saw 2, and Spiral that just came out. And he'll come up with kind of world building things where you sign up and it's a premium experience of $100 or $150, and he does like pre-interviews with you, like leave a voicemail
Oh man, I love it.
or
I
fill
love
out
it.
this thing that's about information about you that's personal, and then a curated box will be mailed to
Like
you.
built around you. Like
Yeah,
I
and it's
watched the game. I
about
loved the
you.
game. The game was one of my favorite movies. I watched it with my dad. I
Yeah.
remember watching it over and over again. Where it's like, like it's built for you.
Mhm.
It's like a game. You're in the game, and you don't know what part of the game is the game or
Yep.
not the game.
Anytime
Like
you can
it's a dream.
sprinkle that in, I mean, it just adds another level to it. But yeah, ARGs are a really interesting marketing ploy too, outside of
And we see them the most. Like South by Southwest got super faint. Like
yeah.
of like having these experiences
Mhm.
for brands, right? And places like the Comic Cons
Yeah, for sure.
have been here. It's video
I saw
game
a ton
conventions.
of, kind of ARG, mostly scavenger hunt stuff this year at Comic Con that was just popping up. And I didn't do any of them.
Tons. Well, you covered a ton of
Yeah.
stuff. Oh, well, was that South by
No, this was at San Diego Comic Con.
San
Yeah, yeah.
Diego? Yeah,
I mean, in a year where there's a strike, kind of unprecedented
right.
for Comic Con
Very weird year,
since it turned Hollywood.
and then none of the big players were at Comic Con this
No, it
year,
was
right? Like,
just and the ones that were there, it was stuff they probably already do. It's panels, but then you'd have pilots. They could still show pilots. They just don't have the star power for panels. But all the activations were there. So I think that's an important thing to bring up is strike happened. Super bummer that you don't get to see everybody talk about their stuff, and also sad for them because I'm sure they're just as excited to talk about it. But you still had the studios bringing activations, and quite a bit of them in a year where that was down everywhere else. You still had plenty of stuff to do with the experiences. So in some ways, I think people were worried, like, will the strike hurt that aspect of it? It's probably amplified it because they need to lean on that stuff more than ever now, without their star power available until the strike gets settled. So fingers crossed
very
that
true.
they reach a deal
Yeah,
that's fair for them.
yes, true story.
And they are compensated fairly. I'm all for that. But yeah, I did notice that they really seem to go all in on experiences at like Comic Con, for instance, um, and everyone seemed to really enjoy all the experiences they were going through. So um,
Yeah, and I want to eat lunch at a famous
at Sonic the Hedgehog
like
restaurant, for instance, that's what they
I
did this
do.
year.
I
Or they
do.
had
And or Studio Ghibli, like I want to go to their park and see the
yeah,
places like that they love. Like I want to go on a ride that has a story from an anime and
mhm,
like whatever it may be, like that tie in the things that I love and make me feel like I'm more part of that story. Like to me, it's just so duh.
yeah,
Like that
yeah,
this is where people want to go. And I wouldn't be too worried that Star Wars, what was it called? The Star Wars experience, the
yeah. I don't
one,
know the
the
exact name
hotel.
that they called it, but yeah, the
Star
hotel and
Wars, the hotel,
yeah,
that was $5 grand. I don't think they were wrong, and I think they probably did it. I bet it was awesome to go through. But I wouldn't say that if that wasn't a success, that this idea that people want to be a bigger part of their fandoms and they want to be like they want to have these like interactive experiences. I don't not only not see it going away, I see it merging too with with video games,
hmm
with Roblox
yeah,
experiences,
yeah. We've seen that.
with
Yeah,
like and merging into gaming, and they're all kind of itching for the same thing.
But
Like I want to be more a part of my things I love.
for sure, and I think you're right in terms of, well, Star Wars wasn't necessarily wrong, but you're not making it accessible for people necessarily at that price point.
Well, I think we found a price. I
Yeah.
think we found a price.
So the one thing,
But there's a lot of wiggle room with $5,000 per family.
sure,
There's a lot of wiggle room. We can still make awesome experiences.
but if you can find and take that, I'm not saying that everything's always perfect with these studios or rehash it, but if you can take that Blumhouse approach or A24 approach, find the fandom and still have that experience. And I think one good example that we have through 13th Floor is the Queen Mary experience. It's not necessarily like a brand or an IP, but it's a folklore legend or haunted legend of the Queen Mary
sort of almost is
that you can
now. It's
stay on.
crazy.
It's like the Shining Hotel and like Crescent Hotel and that kind of thing. You want to go experience it and stay there. You can do that with Queen Mary. The Great Horror Campout had 2,000 people in tents, and you're experiencing a horror movie. And they're done in such a way that you're not spending, exorbitant amounts of money to live within those worlds for, a night. And I think if you can manage to do that and capture that essence, then you've got something that's accessible to everybody too, on top of the fact that you're providing a fun experience.
Great Horror Campout. Tell everybody just a little touch, because it's like, duh. Like Queen Mary blows me away. I'll do that. I've wanted to stay in the Queen Mary forever.
Yeah.
I'm almost not. That would be a place I would question. Like I would be like, I'd be all about it until the day I got on.
Yeah, right.
And then when I turned off the lights and came back in the room,
you heard anything?
And I'm like, I'd be like, why am I here? This is the dumbest idea I've ever done. But like, it is almost now like things have not mainstreamed, and I don't say mainstream. It's just become part of culture in a way. Now that we're in a world where aliens, where UFOs is like it's getting weird.
Yeah,
and
it
so
definitely is.
and with the the popularity of ghost story podcasts and like podcasts that have come up, it's just things like the Queen Mary become kind of culturally the same as a brand.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, that goes back to the Stanley Hotel, the Crescent Hotel. Those types of things are what they are because of the pop culture relevance through film.
And weirdly enough, Stanley started going towards it and then backed away from it.
Right. And the
stopped doing the tours.
Side tangent, but the hotel where Shining's filmed is actually in a national park in Oregon.
Correct. Okay. Stanley is just where Stephen King stayed.
And the exterior,
he got kind of the idea. And the exterior kind of got the idea because it was kind of a haunted hotel for like, what would happen if you ever at this place?
And then Kubrick took all the set design inspiration from that hotel that was like Indian hotel. I can't think of the name of it. In Oregon, and when you walk in there, it's like, oh, this looks familiar. Oh, because it's almost identical, shot by shot scenes of how they designed the set. So complete side tangent, but yes, they're brands. I've always
wanted that carpet. So like,
right,
goal.
Yeah,
iconic. My studio carpet here,
iconic. Yeah. I know we just pivoted to paranormal there for a minute, and we mentioned before about shows that we were watching. I feel like we should mention those really quick while we're in the topic.
Let's do it before we got to get off, because it's strangely, of course, we were like, hey, let's make this pithy, let's make this go, and then like,
we tried.
Happen. It's always a super fun conversation. I think we introduce people to a lot of stuff.
Probably, probably because it's not mainstream per se. I don't think really any of it.
Because to me, it's very much.
I mean, in my world, it's like, oh, I know about this. But sometimes I forget when I talk to people, Joe, like who knows what, and like, oh shit, I got to really back this up, or not even talk about it because people don't have any clue. I do that to my wife all the time. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's just great. I just don't say anything about it to my wife until she like gets to see the thing, and she's like, "What the?
Well, so
This is what you do for a living?"
perfect tangent because we're at Comic-Con. I took my wife and son this year for
You took your
the
kid.
first time.
Like
My
I
son
was
is
so
6.
pumped for you.
Yeah, he's
I
6.
and I didn't show my 9-year-old either because she would have hated. She'd been like, "What are you not taking me to this, Dad?"
My wife has endured Comic-Con before a child and stood in line in Hall H for
Endured
8 hours for me to get coverage on
Hall
The
H,
Walking Dead
world
and walked
famous.
in on the end of Game of Thrones, and she was like, "What is this?" She hadn't watched it yet. We didn't watch it until
Oh God.
way after it. I don't know how many seasons it got into. So she walked in at the end of the panel, didn't know anything about it, and then of course we watch it like a year later, and she's like, "Dang, I went to that panel and didn't know anything."
I
Um,
saw all these people that
yeah.
I love now. I'm like, yeah.
The tangent I was going though is at night. My son, like right before we left, or maybe even slightly before that, started to get into paranormal shows. I didn't know how I'd
Oh
feel about
God.
that. We started watching
Yes, I get it.
paranormal
Yeah.
shows, and I think it was just he saw commercials because we watched Josh Gates, Expedition Unknown, and Expedition X, which is his team of like
Great
paranormal kind
shows.
of. It's fantastic, and
Well, they touch on it, the fantastic and the like
yeah,
they
yeah.
touch. Yeah.
And it wasn't even that, but he saw Ghost Adventures commercials. I'm like, God, I
Well,
don't know if
that's
I
a
should.
tough
He should be
one.
watching Ghost Adventures of all these shows, and he did. He
Yeah,
watched
like the one that take them on these ghost
right.
adventures. Like,
That's
but it is like the one that makes the most sense as
so.
the most entertaining.
He starts watching some, and I'm just like, God, man, they're talking about some heavy issues on that. Like they're framing them in such a way that I'm like, good Lord, this kid's gonna be depressed.
Welcome to okay. We've just brought up something that I guess like for everybody that's not a parent, sorry,
Yeah,
but like we're in a different world. I got to kind of rent whatever I wanted to, but I still had some like
guardrails.
my daughter can watch whatever
Oh
like people can say like, well, I have pretty good control over it. And I'm like, you don't.
no. Well, he knows how
Sorry.
to work the
And
remote. He knows where to find the
yeah,
DVR. He
of
can
course.
search for stuff. Um,
Yeah. Wait till YouTube. And
oh,
then
I know. So
and
that's
it's all game
you
over.
keep giving me like perfect transitions because what I finally did was like, you know what? We're gonna watch Ghost Files from Watcher
Oh,
Network,
Ghost Files is great.
which is
It's a
fantastic,
great
and it's
one.
kind of like comedic, more lighthearted, way more cussing, but
It's a great the Ghost
for
Files is a great
for
series.
yeah, for like
Great.
a younger kid. And so we watched it. So we're at Comic-Con and I introduced him to it here just before we left. All he wanted to do at night, every night, was watch Ghost
Was
Files.
just to watch Ghost
And so
Files.
my
Does it
wife
not
got
bring a tear to your eye?
yeah, my wife got hooked on it though. And so
Hmm.
we're watching just like Ghost File marathon until we got through the whole season. And then they've got the like evidence post show that comes out too. So then we're watching those 20-minute clips. Um, and then, the new season just came out August 25th, and they're at the Missouri Penitentiary. That's the first episode. So nice for us at Jefferson City. But yeah, until that new season came out, he would just sit and binge these things over and over. He's like, oh, Demon Baby's coming up. And then he just laugh his head off about something they said. So yeah, I have a special heart now and spot in my heart now for Ghost Files because not only did my 6-year-old kind of watch it, but I got my wife to start binge watching it. And now we're watching all these, Expedition X together and all this stuff. So that's what I wanted to bring up
Well
was that.
done. Well done,
Yeah.
Dad. Like that's a great win. Like I have my kid like trust me, when I got my kid wanting to do anime cosplay and wanting to watch my old anime, like I was like, I win. My
Absolutely.
daughter's like or my wife is like, you're happy with yourself, I'm sure. I'm like, oh hey.
It's harmless. It's
Because
harmless.
we just watched The Flash and she was like, who's this Michael Keaton? And
Well, have you heard of
I was
Beetlejuice?
like, well, it's like 1989 Batman's kind of my Batman.
Yeah.
So we started that last night, but I
Nice.
do think it's really interesting. She's like, this is actually good. Like,
See?
this
Yeah.
I like. And I'm like, you know what? My first thought is that you're going to think it looks old and dumb and it's going to be,
Yeah.
and you're going to make me feel old. It's not that way. Good story is a good story.
Yeah, for sure.
And with that, like, Tim, I mean, like we could go until 3,
Oh
but
yeah, I could
like,
do another hour, I'm sure. For sure.
but here's the thing is I'll say this, like we didn't even get into Spirit, which is something I wanted to get into,
Yeah.
but the world of, we see just like pumpkin spice, right? Like the season keeps getting longer and longer, and I think we're in a really exciting time for brands, for entertainment, for everything. And it's always good to get your kind of perspective on these things. And yeah, I see the holiday season as being, and traditionally, the Christmas season was a very weird haunted tales type of season. Like
And ironically,
I
the Christmas creep, it just keeps creeping in more and more.
oh, and it becomes just kind of one big blob
Yeah.
of fall and winter. I think the seasonality is really interesting, and I'd love to have you come on just to talk about haunters and this completely different world of
Fandom and
fandom
almost
and
like
weird
underground
animatronic
type society of people. That
that
you
get millions of hits on video, views on YouTube.
Yeah, and not
Like
to get
they
into
should.
it at all, but if anyone's interested, until we do that episode, search the old Facebook, and you're going to find haunter groups for Home Depot, for Spirit Halloween. Tens of thousands of people in these groups, letting you know where props are out at, what they've made at home haunter stuff. So yeah, check that stuff out in the meantime if you're interested in that
It's
community and
becoming
all.
a it's becoming a thing.
It's
Like we
bigger and
have
bigger at
some
home.
we have like multiple garage haunts
Yep, same.
in our
I'm
neighborhood
one of them, and
that are decent,
yeah,
like that are decent. Like I have a lot of pictures being taken, a lot of kids coming up and pulling into the driveway to take pictures in my house. And that is on purpose. Like
exactly. Yeah, yep,
I love it.
yeah.
So as we get ready for this season, thanks so much for coming on and chatting us up. I can't wait to kind of see check out some more stuff from 13th Floor. So congrats on that.
Thanks,
And Panic Fest. Why haven't I been? Like I gotta
dude. I
go.
don't know.
Like
That's a
this
good
is fun.
question.
I don't like to go places.
It's fair. It's fair. I
I have a really
understand.
great studio, but yeah, I could do it virtually too.
True. Yeah.
So check out Panic Fest, everybody. You can find Tim Canton in lots of
Yeah.
different places. Just go to his website and check it out. Where
Social.
can they find you? Where can they find more about Panic Fest on?
Yeah. It's panicfilmfest.com, and then at Panic Film Fest on pretty much every platform, I think. So.
And then 13th Floor, where can people find out if they have an experience in their neighborhood?
Yeah, I would say the best way to do that is just to go to 13thfloor.com, spell out the word 13th, and you'll be able to see all the markets, all the haunts, and learn a little bit about them and what themes are happening in each of those haunts this year.
And where can I get Panic Fest merch?
Oh
It's
man,
always so
panicfilmfest.com. There is a merch button that'll take you to our Cotton Bureau downright creepy store where we've got Panic Fest, like t-shirts, all kinds of t-shirts in there.
Dude, if you want the best, do you have the ones from past?
Oh yeah, they're in there. Yeah, we upload each year. We have the exclusive in theater one, and then when we're done with the festival that year, I try and put it online.
If you just want to check out killer design and just like perfect shirts, like now that I know that, I'm gonna go spend money right now.
Well, I
Just
appreciate that
like
very much.
3 shirts that I know that I'm like, oh, I was looking at the Instagram, I'm like, I need that shirt.
Yeah, the melting cat and the cat demon
Dude,
has
the
been kind of
melting
our
cat is
theme,
sick.
along with the Illuminati, kind
Well,
of
the
tongue
new
in
one
cheek.
is just like the purples and the it's really good.
Mm-hmm.
So check out Panic Fest, everybody. Check out 13th Floor. Check out the million things that you do. And thanks for coming on the Pop Marketing Podcast. And I'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks for having me. Happy Halloween, everybody.